All right, let's bring him in. Sean McGuire of Nesson.com. S-Mac, how are we feeling after the T. Higgins news, man? Sad? Not surprised? This is part of it? You're just sitting back and going, hey, the Cowboys know how to draft wide receivers. That's one thing they can do right.
I think defeated is probably a fair word. I mean, the dream is dead, right? I mean, and when you first hear it, when you first hear the reports, it's not just the fact that the franchise tag he's going to get the franchise tag. It's the fact that he's agreeing to a long-term deal, and the Bengals anticipate coming to a long-term deal with him. So at this point, it seems like the franchise tag would just be like a very short-term thing. It's not, at least again, according to those reports, it's not that he's anticipated to play on the franchise tag in 2025. It's just, if they can't come to terms on a long-term deal before March 4th, then they have an extra few months. So I think that's the biggest takeaway, and it stinks. I mean, it's I wouldn't say it's like a stunner. I'm not surprised that the Bengals want to keep T. Higgins. I'm not, especially after Joe Burrow came out and put such public pressure on the organization to do it over the last months at this point. So not totally surprised, but I definitely do think it's fair for Patriots fans to kind of feel defeated about it.
Yeah, I told George I wasn't surprised that this happened. Not so much from the Patriots standpoint, being disappointed, Mizzle, but from the Bengals are stupid. And so I ask you, I want to stay with T. Higgins for a second here, because he has to be ticked. I mean, he has to be ticked off. If we get into a situation where it's, he's pouting and he's unhappy and they can't come to terms like you talked about, the franchise tag really just buys them more time to negotiate with him for what he really wants. Let's say that goes south too, though. I mean, it still comes down to dollars and cents. Can you talk to me about a path where T. Higgins is still in play for the Patriots? Or would this be a term I used with George earlier, Esmeezy, is kicking the can down the road? Is this something that would just reappear next offseason? Or is there still a way in which a disgruntled T. Higgins can still force his way out of town?
Is there a chance? I would say, yeah, there's probably a chance, but I think the Bengals would really have to offend T. Higgins with their offers. And, I think that's probably the only way that he comes free at this point. And, just based on hearing his comments, and God, it's one of those things, you take it for what it's worth, right? I mean, no player is going to come out and say, yes, I don't want to remain here or anything like that. Obviously, everyone says, yeah, I want to stay in Cincinnati. I want to stay in, insert city. But he did come out and say that. And, he said that he wants to remain with Joe Burrow and he wants to remain with Jamar Chase. And, that pact, I know Mike Gesicki was in it too. I don't know how he got included in that star trio, but Mike Gesicki was in there too. And essentially just after hearing a lot of Burrow's comments, it does make me think that T. Higgins does want to remain in Cincinnati. And again, if he gets, if he's offended, if they, really lowball him on some offers, I think there's a chance, but I would say at this point it's a very small chance. And it's just the team has to know, like, they are better with T. Higgins, and yes, they have another, top, probably the number 1, number 2 wide receiver in the league on the other side of him, but that doesn't take away from what T. Higgins brings to the team as well. And I just think, with him there. They're a really good team, and they know that, and they know how they have to pay for it.
Yeah, it's either $26 million T. Higgins plays for this year, getting $26 million fully guaranteed, or the Bengals for a guy that's going to be 26 this upcoming season. They give him the 4-year deal, get him still in his prime, keep their star quarterback happy. And he's also the one saying, hey, give me a pure up, like restructure my contract, make it all a signing bonus, pay me now. That alleviates a cap hit, because he sees what the Eagles are doing. Joe Burrow does. He sees what the Eagles are doing. He sees what the Chiefs are doing. He's going to. You have to have takes two to dance.
From the beginning.
And the Bengals have to. Because he got his money. And you know what? The Bengals aren't the smartest front office. They're cheap because it's real money. When you give them a signing bonus, they give them all that money front loaded. They can't earn it through incentives, and that's real money out of the owner's pockets. That's not $500 million over the lifetime of a contract. That's $400 million out of their pocket right away, just throwing astronomical numbers out there. But that takes two to tango. That's why I was surprised the Bengals extended him. But when Joe Burrow's making comments of give me a signing bonus, let me push my money towards the back end, offset the cost, let's pay guys now. Or when he's also saying that, you know what, I'll create the cap space. And then you have T. Higgins getting a new agent. That's a lot of things pointing to let's make it work with the Bengals and get them to stay there. All right, Sean, let's talk franchise tag guys. You put out an awesome article on net.com. Guys you are expecting could possibly be franchise tagged. Who do you got on that list? I'm sure T. Higgins was the top of that, where this is something that shocked us, but at the same time, you go, all right, the Bengals did smart football. They did smart business. Who else you got on your list, though, Sean?
Yeah, so essentially what the storyline was and what the premise of the story was just, the Patriots should keep their eye on these players. And two of those I'll just kind of start with are offensive tackles, Ronnie Stanley and Alaric Jackson of the Rams, Ronnie Stanley of the Ravens. I'll start with him. Right now, the franchise tag for that position is like $25 million. And I can't, player at 31 years old, especially with Baltimore's, financial situation, they don't, that's pretty rich. That's too rich for them, given their financial situation. So Ronnie Stanley definitely, I would say, expected to hit the market. And again, he's a little older, but he's still legit. I mean, he would become the top tackle on the market. He'd become one of the top players on the market once he, officially gets there. 6'6", 315 pounds. He allowed 2 sacks in 1,062 snaps at left tackle last year. 2 sacks in 1,062 snaps. So obviously just would greatly help the Patriots. And there's some things, I saw a few projections on him specifically, and I was seeing 2 years, 40 million or 2 years, 43 million, something like that. So certainly a rich contract in the short term, but the Patriots have that money. And, one thing I would say is now with the T. Higgins stuff, I mean, they should allocate those funds towards, players at different positions that fill big needs. And I just think, Ronnie Stanley now should kind of, once he hits the open market and doesn't get franchise tagged, I would think should become, one of their top targets. Sticking with the same position, Alaric Jackson, like I said, I would be surprised if he was franchise tagged again, given, that 21 or that 25 million franchise tag. And just undrafted guy. He's really developed over the last few years, coming off his best season in 2024, played almost 900 snaps at left tackle, just 3 sacks allowed. And he's massive, 6'7", 345 pounds, still just 26 years old. So, that age, obviously 5 years younger than Ronnie Stanley, doesn't have the same resume, obviously, but 5 years younger. So he would fit the Patriots timeline a little bit. And then there was an article published on ESPN today that kind of matched players to specific fits, and the Patriots were listed as the best fit for Jackson. So I think that goes to show he's not as highly graded as someone like Stanley. I think ESPN had him as the 40th free agent out of their 50. But again, would fit the Patriots long-term standing. And I just think he's another one that that the Patriots should keep an eye on. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a guy. I mean, he's played left tackle. No, he's played left tackle, and he's played at a high level, but he's so young. The Rams, now think about it. If they figure out how to get rid of the Cooper Kupp cap hit in some way, if someone just eats, let's say half of those cap hits, 13, 15 million each season the next 2 years, then you allocate that to an Alaric Jackson extension. They get ahead of the market, or they could end up tagging him to prevent him from leaving, and they get him to an extension. There isn't no lock that the franchise tag happens, but teams do that to protect themselves and kind of trap a player in a way. Ronnie Stanley makes sense just at his age, and the Ravens only have $5 million in cap space. They got to figure him out, or they just got to look towards the draft. A team that drafts really, really well, that's a team I could see betting on themselves. I don't love Stanley at his age. I don't love that he's had the first healthy season in the last 3 years, but it's about what do I hate the most? And I hate the Patriots left tackle depth chart right now. So I would take Ronnie Stanley at his age with his injury question marks over the left tackle plan for the Pats right now because they have nobody. And an actual left tackle, I hope Elliott Wolf learned it this way. An actual left tackle is better than no left tackle. It sounds crazy to say out loud. I know, guys. It sounds crazy to say out loud, but the Patriots have to learn this at some point.
Yeah, I completely agree. And listen, I'm a Stanley guy, but I think George said that so eloquently of just get me a left tackle. Esmeezy, I've been known on this show to tell George, I don't care if you go to the local market basket and get a big guy that can move. Get me someone that can play the position. So I'm fine with Stanley. His resume going all the way back to Notre Dame has been solid, but I'll take Jackson too. I really don't care. I want to ask you this, though. We're talking about all these franchise tags and this free agent market that in some positions are kind of weak. Wide receiver comes to mind. Is this more of a case to trade back with that number 4 pick in this draft to acquire more picks because, Esmeezy, of the free agent market and some of these guys like a T. Higgins that we thought would be available, they're not going to be? Is it more onus now put on the draft maybe to trade back and acquire more picks in this draft to fill some of these holes in the roster? And maybe you won't be spending as much money as you thought this offseason, not because you don't have it to spend, but because the supply doesn't necessarily match the demand. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, the obvious point of that, or the obvious counterpoint, is you need to find someone to trade back with, right? I mean, it's kind of, that's the top of the draft board is kind of, it sounds like it's going to shake out that way. You know, there's a few really high prospects, Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, you know, a few of the quarterbacks are up there. But other than that, it's like, it feels like everything I read is kind of a middle ground when it comes to the other spots. So the Patriots might have trouble trading back at 4. But to answer your question, yeah, I mean, George just highlighted it and very eloquently, you know, franchise wideouts are not found in free agency. It's just they don't get there. You know, they're found in the draft, or they're found, you know, via these blockbuster trades. So with that said, I think, you know, if you don't target one in the draft at this point, the Patriots very well could be back here again next year saying, you know, we have a better depth chart. We have a better number 2. We have a better number 3. But we don't have a number 1. And so, yeah, I think it's very fair to think that way.
There's always the possibility that you have the Saints, the Jets, as crazy as that sounds, the Raiders, quarterback needy teams, where you stay within that top 10. And you are in the range of a Shamar Stewart out of Texas A&M, Jalen Walker out of Georgia, Tyler Warren. It's pass catchers. The Patriots need weapons. They need guys that can be reliable for Drake May, and it'll be a multi-year rebuild. Look at the Lions. That was the best offense we've ever seen. Not literally, some would say. They drafted their right tackle in Penei Sewell. They drafted Jahmyr Gibbs, the explosive running back. They complimented him in free agency with the David Montgomery. They drafted Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamison Williams, and Sam Laporta. Took multiple years. It takes that for any team to do the rebuild. The Patriots have to. But they go after the top prospects. They're picking at the top of the draft picks. There's a reason they were in this. Or they traded up for like a Jahmyr Gibbs. There's just multiple avenues. The one thing the Patriots have is the flexibility on their side. But to have this massive need, and to me the need is bigger at left tackle than wide receiver, because they can go deep in the draft and build out a wide receiver room. Look at how the Packers have done it. Like, they can go with that. Let's get a bunch of wide receiver 2s. And then eventually they can find their way to getting a wide receiver 1. We'd all see left tackle is such a big need that a Will Campbell could be a placeholder. Could he be a good left tackle and a great left guard? And then while you're figuring out the left tackle spot, he's there. And then you bump him inside. If it wins, who cares how you get there? There's multiple avenues. It's just like a premier pass catcher, premier left tackles don't hit the open market. There's a reason for that. One way or another, the Patriots are going to have to give up draft compensation. They're going to have to give up valuable assets in some ways for them to solve their issues right now. Past draft issues have been bad. Who else you got on your list, though, Sean? What other guys that we could see getting franchise tagged do you have on your list?
Yeah, just to stick with wide receivers, and I know you mentioned earlier, but Darius Slayton. So, I mean, he is the Giants' top free agent, but I think it would be quite a surprise to see him command, what wide receivers are going for on the franchise tag. I saw there was a projection that he was going to receive like 16 million annually. The tag, obviously, much more than that. And so, 28-year-old Slayton, caught 50 balls for like 770 yards 2 years ago. 4 of his first 6 years, he's caught 45 plus catches, 700 plus yards. So nothing like he's not a T Higgins. And, when it comes to resume, when it comes to production, but he would still elevate the Patriots receiver room. And it really just comes down to that. He would be that wide receiver 2 maybe, and kind of that mix sort of guy. So I think he's, I know that you guys have talked about him a little bit before. I think he's another player that really the Patriots could target. And I'll just kind of end with this one, and it brings us to a little bit of a different conversation, but another guy I mentioned, Sam Darnold. And you might think, why should the Patriots care about a quarterback? They have Drake May. Again, this is a completely different conversation, but essentially the conversation is, well, teams ahead of the Patriots in the draft care about Sam Darnold. They care about what's going to happen with Sam Darnold when it comes to their franchise tag. You're talking the Titans, you're talking the Browns, Giants, Raiders. Who knows about the Rams with all the Stafford news recently. So, again, different conversation, but I think the Patriots would have their eye on a quarterback like that. Again, probably the quarterback who is set to hit free agency, the top one. And so they'll be paying attention to that now that the franchise tag deadline is open.
Hey, When I saw Sam Darnold on your list, I go, what? But it makes sense. Teams need quarterbacks. He could get $41 million if he gets franchise tagged. And if he turns that down, he'd kind of be crazy. But again, there are dumb teams out there that'll pay him a lot. I think that's where it's just such a catch, but it makes sense. And then what's most important for the Patriots, the domino effect that happens. Because the Saints team, I know they're in cap hell, but however they can navigate it. Maybe a Panthers team. He's been in Carolina before. The Jets wouldn't do it. He cannot work in New York. He can't work with that media. There's no way that goes back. But there are quarterback needy teams in the top 10 and outside. Teams that need bridge quarterbacks or think they can do something with Sam Darnold. He won 14 games with the Vikings, Trav. He was in MVP conversations. He turned into Sam Darnold when the lights got brightest and the stage got biggest, and he made me buy you lunch, Trav. Literally, I had to buy lunch because of him, and I'll never do that again. Never bet on Sam Darnold again. But it's the most important thing that you point out, Sean, is that domino effect it has on the rest of the draft. Because if the Patriots are in a trade back spot and teams are desperate for quarterbacks. You mentioned Darius Slayton real quick. You mentioned the numbers he puts up. That was with Daniel Jones, Drew Lock, Tyrod Taylor, Tommy DeVito. Yep. Why was he dealing with Daniel Jones? Because the Giants were desperate to have a franchise quarterback and paid him all that money. Other teams are going to do the same. Trav, you were going to go?
Yeah, and let Saquon walk. What idiots they were. Esmeezy, I don't give a damn about Sam Darnold's pockets. What I want to do is fleece every team. So let me get this straight, just so I'm following you. How would this look to benefit the Patriots? So we want Darnold to not be franchise tagged, hit the open market, and then play hardball, right? Because if he's playing hardball, he wants all the money in the world. Teams are like, we're not going to give Sam Darnold this. We got to figure it out in the draft, right? That's what we want. So now you get the teams wanting to get up to 4 to position themselves to get one of these mediocre quarterbacks from college. That's what we want, right? Am I following this?
Yeah.
You want him to get franchise tagged.
You took it a step even further.
You want him to get franchise.
What I was going to say, I was going to say that too. I was going to say you want him to get franchise tagged because it's then one less free agent quarterback. So then all the teams that need quarterbacks then need to target in the draft.
Okay.
You took it in a different way. I see where you're going with it. He plays hardball and all of a sudden it's, mid-April and he's not signed anywhere and all that sort of thing. That wouldn't be a bad thing either, I guess. Okay. But yeah, the way I was phrasing it, it has more to do with like the trickle-down effect that if he gets franchise tagged, then the teams who need quarterbacks have one less option.
Okay, there we go. I had to clear that up, George, because my way was way more sinister then that's Macy's.
The Saints can't afford him. They have they're $54 million over the cap. But imagine if he wasn't tagged, he signed with the Saints. Yeah. That eliminates trade partners for the Patriots. The best thing for the Vikings is they get to an extension with Sam Darnold. What they might do, though, they might go the murky route. They might not tag him, let him go test the market, and then go, this is what we'll pay you. You're going to be a bridge QB. 3-year deal, 2 years are real. They figure out it. Maybe they just front load it. And then when J.J. McCarthy's really ready, he takes over. Yep. Maybe you have a team like the Colts that you have a desperate GM and a desperate head coach where they look at Anthony Richardson and they go, he is not it, but I got to save my job. And they can salvage a Sam Darnold dome team, good wide receiving room, not as good of a play caller, but there's different avenues. But you want as many quarterback needy teams. The best thing for the Patriots is Sam Darnold staying in Minnesota. Look at that. Patriots fans rooting for Sam Darnold. What year is it?